Yes, I didn't want to cause a scene. I hate to have any sort of fuss, so I thought perhaps you could, subtly, in a more quiet manner.
You want me to check it out?
Check it out.
Okay, yeah.
It's funny, I have a feeling I've met you before.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Some religions think that the egg is the symbol of the soul. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Would you like an egg?
No, thank you. I got a thing about chickens.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week, here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. It can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, well-known, or something probably still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and bone of the film, highlighting our favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep and possibly concerning love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And today, joining me yet again in the Bear Cave of Terror is Mr. Rob Staeger. Rob, thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me. I love this movie, and I love talking about it with you. So,
I'm excited to talk about it with you too, because as I was telling you, I had not seen this movie before. I'd seen the video cover many times. When I worked in video stores, it was a popular rental. It was just one of those things that I always looked at and was like, DeNiro? Okay, whatever. Just never watched it until you were like, hey, I want to talk about this movie because I love this movie. So thank you. Because I loved it too.
Glad you do. I'm glad you do. It's a crazy movie, and it's a fun one, and kind of formative for me in a few ways. So it was interesting to see.
And that movie, of course, is 1987's Angel Heart, directed by Alan Parker. Man, Angel Heart. How can we sum this up? Like, what's a good way of describing this plot?
Well, it's a detective story. It's set in 1955, and Mickey Rourke plays a detective, Harry Angel, who gets hired by a sinister dude who is looking for a missing singer named Johnny Favorite. He went missing sometime during the war and World War II. He's trying to track him down because he owes him. They have a business deal that is not yet complete. And Harry starts looking around for him, and his investigation takes him eventually to New Orleans, where it seems like he was involved with voodoo practitioners, and things start getting spooky and dangerous as people keep on turning up dead around him.
That is a good way of putting it without revealing all that much. I mean, a lot happens in this movie, and it goes definitely from, just a kind of a creepy detective story to a full-on, more supernatural story than it may have seemed from the beginning. But there's a lot of really cool reveals, a lot of really interesting twists, some great portrayals, some great acting in this movie from a couple pretty well-known actors, or at least today they're very well-known. Back in 1987, they may have just been starting out, or maybe famous for different things unrelated to Hollywood. That's a good way of putting it. It's a detective story.
A detective story. Yeah. Yeah, and it's Noirvember, and I figured what better movie to talk about on this podcast in Noirvember is a supernatural tinged detective story.
And I like, just to kind of throw something in there from one of the interviews with Alan Parker, what attracted him to this type of movie was, I think, the tagline on the script that he first got, which said just very simply, Raymond Chandler meets The Exorcist. And he was like, I need to do this movie. So he wrote the script, or rewrote the script, and decided to direct it as well. So this is his baby. But yeah, so the big thing about it, of course, is film noir, first and foremost. And how does this present itself as in that sort of subgenre?
Well, one of the ways I've heard noir described, I mean, there's classic tropes of noir. There's the femme fatale. There is the detective, or an investigator, there's usually almost always someone in over their head. Someone, basically, secrets are withheld from them and it comes back to bite them in the ass. And in the way, there's the publisher of hard case crime novels. At one point, I heard an interview with him where he talked about noir as if the protagonist is a fly crawling up the top of a glass, trying to get to the top so it can get out of a glass. And only when it gets to the top, it realizes the glass is upside down and there's nothing it can do about it. And that is, to me, the essence of noir is you can try and you can try and you can try, but sooner or later, your fate is sealed.
Right.
And with Harry, he's been hired to investigate this singer, Johnny Favorite, who has become famous thanks to this client, Louis Cypher. It's played by Robert DeNiro, and is all stillness and gravitas and just hidden, like he's very solicitous, and at the same time, Harry can't say no to him. Right. Every time he tries to back out, and there's several times he tries to back out of this deal, he'll be like, "Do you need more money? I can get you more money." Like, money is never an object, even though the beginning of his fee is like $125 a day. And then he bumps it up to $5,000 for the case. And later on, he's offering more. And Harry's like, the money is not the problem. I'm just, corpses are piling up around me.
It does. It starts off pretty, an interesting part about this movie is that it really sets a mood like in the opening credits, where you have a stray cat and a stray dog coming across a corpse,
Mm-hmm.
a bloody dead body of a woman in an alleyway. It's just kind of shocking. Like, right off, it's dark, it's gritty, you're confronted with death right away, and it's unclear how or why or who that person is. And of course, it doesn't relate to anything else in the story. It's just, this is the environment that Harry Angel lives in. This is happening in his neighborhood. This is the kind of New York that we're getting. And there is a quick little moment where there is a person walking down the sidewalk, not too far from that alleyway, with a cane, just sort of sauntering away. Could potentially have been this Mr. Louis Cypher, because every time you see him, he's got a walking stick, a cane of some sort. Yeah. So, maybe he's been there since the first moment of this film. But yeah, I mean, it's very much a loud, noisy 1950s New York. It's close enough to the 40s where it still kind of has that weird sort of post-war feeling, and it's not close enough to the big societal changes that we were getting once we hit the 60s.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like this weird, perfect little bubble of time.
And that was intentional on Alan Parker's part. He moved, the book is set in 1959, and he thought, that's too close to the 60s. Let's move it back to 1955, and that feels like the part of the 50s that was closer to the 40s. And society hasn't started, the upheavals of the 60s haven't happened, and it was just, it's just people are still recovering from the war, and still that hanging over the country. And
yeah, and that's even a kind of a plot point with Harry himself. I mean, he was a soldier. He didn't serve for very long. In 1943, he was severely injured and was sent home. And, you know, he says, like, he was pretty messed up from what happened there. Everything that happened before it is essentially a blur. So, you know, he fits into this kind of weird space of time.
Yeah, he is PTSD and
Yeah.
And the things we know about Harry psychologically are he has shell shock, and he has a thing about chickens. Chickens disturb
really
him.
hates chickens. Really hates chickens. So that must be also a symptom of war. You know, you have an aversion to death as well as chickens.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think a couple other ways that they presented sort of because like noir is very gritty, so it's not just the setting, but also how it's presented on film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and Alan Parker talked a lot about like washing out the colors, and everything's very gray. Especially in New York, it has more of like a gray, blue, steely look to it.
Yeah, with distinct shadows, and just the contrast between dark and light can be very distinct in noir.
And even, you know, even though we're talking about an enormous city, it feels very claustrophobic. There's a lot of like narrow alleys, hallways, staircases, elevators are very narrow and dark and kind of in a, you know, you see a lot of things through open doorways without the expansiveness until there is a scene at the beach on Coney Island. And I think probably that's the first time that you actually get to see the sky.
Yeah, you might be right
in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely has a feel. And then, of course, the second half of the film, which was a change that Alan Parker had, he decided to add New Orleans as one of the big settings of the film. Because in the book, everything takes place. The book by William Hjortsberg called Falling Angel, that this movie is based on, all takes place in New York. But Parker was like, there's a lot going on with particular types of people, with a particular religion, voodoo, and the occult, and why not just bring it back to New Orleans, where it's really, you know, where the heart is. And even there, it's much brighter. There's a lot more sunlight. There's the countryside. He drives out to fields and swamps and things like that. So there's a lot more open air movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sunnier, although there are some really big, severe rain situations where there's a lot of rain coming down at times. But generally, it's a very different feel. But even that feels kind of washed out too. Like on screen, it's more yellowy. Mm-hmm. It's dusty. It's kind of desaturated in that way, as opposed to sort of like the wet, cold blue of New York. It's hot, almost steamy.
Yeah.
But also dusty.
Yeah. It's very, the heat is oppressive. It's very, I mean, you see him get off the train and like he's just covered in sweat. The train, apparently the scene where he gets off the train in New Orleans was shot in, I believe, a station in Hoboken. And they actually had to push the engine in. They had to push it in because it wasn't working on its own, this vintage train that they got. And so they borrowed the station in Hoboken to do that.
And then they just covered him in sweat. I mean, that shirt was clinging.
Yeah,
that was clinging to a very beefy 1986, 97 Mickey Rourke.
Yes.
I mean, he was thick with two C's, but also kind of schlubby the whole time too. Like, I mean, it fits with the character of like being sort of a down and out private eye. Nothing really fits right. His shirt's untucked, and you know, he always kind of looks like he's about to fall over because he's sleepy or just hungover.
And he is never clean shaven in this entire thing, but it's always that Don Johnson stubble. It's very, but he's just this. He's a gorgeous slob in this, you know. It's just
gorgeous slob.
Yeah,
gorgeous slob.
And so when they get to New Orleans, this whole city opens up, and it's a totally, well, it's kind of a fish out of water thing for one thing. He's never been there, but it's also, this city has so much old world flavor and also Caribbean flavor to it in the sense that it's just these balconies, colorful paint in the French Quarter, the kids tap dancing in the street for quarters or whatever, probably nickels at the time.
It's also, because it's 1955 New Orleans, Louisiana, it's segregated. So Jim Crow fully in play here. And that's very apparent. I mean, if you look closely at any of the city scenes and the people's interaction, you're like, everyone's separated. Black families and black people on this side, white people on this side, they don't really mix too much except in very key scenes. But also there's one part where he gets onto a streetcar and he sits behind, like right behind the four colored only sign that's there on the seats. And it's just it's kind of a stark reminder of when this takes place. You can't get away from that.
Yeah.
And that kind of maybe plays into a couple other things too that we run into in New Orleans.
But there's some scenes in New Orleans. There's scenes in Louisiana. At one point he follows someone out to a voodoo ceremony and sees this like incredible dancing going on out in the countryside at night, drumming and dancing. And it was choreographed actually by the guy who choreographed Alan Parker's previous movie Fame. Louis Falco is the name of the choreographer. And it's unlike a lot of choreography that you would see in something like Fame. These people aren't moving in unison. They're moving very much in how the spirits move them as they are taken over by the gods. And as that goes, but it is an arresting scene just watching this ceremony. And I mean, I've seen some people talking about, like voodoo practitioners talking about this movie, and they're like, it's Hollywood voodoo. I mean, they did their best, but this is like voodoo is more about helping people. It's more about, healing people. But this is, I mean, watching it, it's frightening and energetic, but it's also very sexualized. There's a lot going on.
And it also, kind of the focal point is the Mambo herself, played by Lisa Bonet, who he meets earlier when he comes down to New Orleans. He goes out to the country to look for somebody who had known Johnny Favorite. He finds her grave, and this woman is her daughter named Epiphany. That Lisa Bonet plays, and Johnny Favorite is her father, so she has a connection, obviously. So he does want to get to know her, but she is a mambo. She's a voodoo mambo, and so she has the ability for the Loa to come down and ride her. And in this scene, like, she really kind of personifies that. She loses herself to that. She gets to off a chicken, which I'm sure Harry was like really excited about. Like, yes, finally kill one of those monsters. But and it is extremely sexual. Like, her top is open. There's a lot of just, the movement and everything. There's something really free about it, even though she's also being kind of taken over at the same time. But there's just a lot of freedom in that movement. And it's intense. And it's really intense, especially after how everything was just very oppressive before in this movie. And then here's this where everything's just kind of like out there. And it's just it's a very interesting contrast to what else is happening in this. But also very occult, which we've been seeing hints of more and more. The closer he gets to New Orleans, but now that he's there, there's much more something magical, something supernatural.
Yeah.
But there's some other really cool locations in New Orleans as well.
Yeah. One of the people that he's trying to track down is a musician that worked with Johnny Favorite named Toot Sweet, which is a name I've always loved.
Yeah.
It's such a great pun. It's French for, right now, but actually I think he plays guitar in this, but he is but toot.
He doesn't toot at all.
He doesn't toot at all. He doesn't toot.
Happening.
Well, they eat a lot of beans in New Orleans, so.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I believe, and I haven't seen confirmation of this, but I believe this was filmed in a very storied New Orleans club called the Maple Leaf Bar. And musically, people like James Booker have played there. Professor Longhair played there. It's a club with a lot of history, and I've been to it. I've been to it a number of times, and One time I went to see a guy named Walter Wolfman Washington play there, and he he never showed up. Eventually, he wasn't the most reliable guy for a number of reasons, but his band cooked. But before his band came on, they set out just a giant crawfish boil that I had no idea that was happening. But they did it every Monday night before Walter's set. And just, I was walking around having some crawfish, pinching the tail, sucking the heads, and a guy was next to me just pointing out other things in the boil that aren't in a lot of boils. Like there was bits of pheasant in there, sausages and corn and potatoes and everything are also in a boil. And I just had the most delicious time there. It was incredible.
And it's because New Orleans is known for the food, the music, just sort of that kind of energy. Toots himself as a character when he shows up, and he was played by
Brownie McGee, I think.
Was Brownie McGee. Yeah, that's right. And he was a very interesting character in this, and of course he wants nothing to do with Harry Angel. He doesn't want to talk about Johnny Favorite at all. He's like, no, that done with that guy. We're I haven't seen him. He's been gone. I thought he was dead. All of that. And of course, he meets an extremely gory end.
Yeah. Yes.
Where, not to spoil too much, but he ends up with his throat slashed and his dick cut off and shoved down his mouth.
Yep.
Like you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
like there's a lot of people who meet, like no one meets a quiet death in this movie.
No, almost every single person who has anything to do with Johnny Favorite, pretty much everybody that Harry Angel talks with ends up very dead and very messy dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the doctor who had falsified Johnny Favorite's discharge papers to Toot Sweet, also the sort of ex-girlfriend of Johnny, who is a white witch magic practitioner in New York, who's from New Orleans, Maggie Kruzmark.
Yes.
Who he goes to see. She attempts to do his charts.
Mm-hmm. She's gone back to New Orleans at that point.
She's gone back to New Orleans. He kind of confronts her there and lies about himself a little bit, but she ends up dead very disgustingly as well.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no happy ending for most of these people in this movie.
Yeah, yeah, and it is sometimes it is quite visual. What visual and very bloody.
Very bloody.
Yeah.
Which was surprising. When you, and I guess maybe that first taste from like the opening scene where you see sort of a bloody corpse in the snow in a back alley, maybe that was just sort of like, it's a hint. This is not going to be, we're not going to be cutting away from things. Like there's going to be a lot of blood here.
Yeah.
You're going to see that. And I did want to mention this too, like pretty much any time there's like a really bloody end, there just so happens to be some woman all dressed in black with a basin and a scrub brush just trying to wash off all that blood. And she appears in Harry's, his nightmares. She pops up and he can never get a look at her face. She's there. At the beginning, there was a parishioner in Reverend John or Father John's church who had shot himself, and she's there trying to clean up the wall.
Pastor John.
Pastor John.
Pastor John.
But she keeps appearing in places, and the basin, the bloody basin, the scrub brush, and this woman all in black just keep appearing. And, if you've seen her, then you know that somebody's died, and it's not pretty.
Yes. So. Also, fans. This movie has its fans.
Anybody is a fan of all the fans? Yeah. Maybe speak up. Yeah. Leave a comment.
And I remember when the fans kind of sometimes reverse direction, and I remember like years ago having discussions with friends about is that when the killer enters the room, basically, and is that a signal? And, the fans, Alan Parker has said he liked just the image of fans as these big rotating blades that could just lop a head off.
Which, interestingly enough, even though it was cut from the film, a lawyer, one of the lawyers from the firm that with Louis Cypher hires Harry Angel, he ends up beheaded by one of these fans, but they cut that whole thing out so you never, they don't acknowledge that. But just so you know, they were going to be using these fans for a more violent purpose. But going on to kind of like the two central actors in this, both Harry Angel, played by Mickey Rourke, and Robert De Niro as Louis Cypher, the two of them on screen, man. I mean, they are just, oof. I mean, their scenes are so tense. And I mean, you put it pretty, succinctly earlier about Robert De Niro's way of portraying him, just very quiet and secretive, but also sinister. He doesn't tell everything, but there's enough in his expression and his eyes that that he knows way more than he's letting on, and it's much worse than anybody could think.
Yeah. It's the first scene together is a standard scene in any film noir. It's the detective getting hired by a client. The client hires a detective, and deep down, this client, there's something bad about him. It's just, and there's something from Law and Order rules. If you've got Robert De Niro playing someone, he is the biggest star in this movie, and he's in 4 scenes. And apparently Alan Parker wanted him to play the Mickey Rourke part, Harry Angel, at one point. And Robert De Niro was like, I think I'm more interested in this part, Louis. But and then it still took about 6 months to get him to sign on.
Right.
Yeah. And
he had to prepare the character too. I mean, he went all out in making this character the Robert De Niro Louis Cypher.
Yeah. which I think we're all the better for.
But there's some fun stories about him getting into character and being in character in the film. One of it, and you do have to say, is his it's very noticeable, his fingernails. He has these sharp manicured nails that look very much out of place on Robert De Niro normally, but for this character just fit perfectly. But the interesting thing is that Alan Parker, because he's in 4 major scenes, Alan Parker went to go and visit with him before filming, I think it was the 3rd scene. And De Niro was all proud. He had his manicurist there. He's like, do you notice anything different about my nails? And Parker's like, no. And he's like, they're longer. I've been making them longer for every scene I'm in. And Alan Parker's like, I didn't even notice it. How much longer are they? And he's like, a whole 1/8 of an inch. And the director's like, nobody will notice that on screen. No one will notice such a slight change from scene to scene. But De Niro didn't care because he knew it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you look very carefully, if you're very, now that you know about it, if you're watching this movie again, you can see from scene to scene, his nails do get slightly longer, but, they don't have to be, Nicki Minaj length or anything for you to really understand this guy means business and the kind of business you don't want to know about.
Yeah, he also has a series of walking sticks, and apparently there was a shop in Paris he bought them all from, and you said it was $30,000.
Yeah, I think they ended up being like $5,000 a piece or something like that.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
But yeah, and they're amazing canes. It's
they are. They're fancy.
Yes. Yeah, and as sloppy as Mickey Rourke looks, Robert De Niro is just put together, just impeccably dressed. He's got long hair just tied in a bun in the back, and a full beard, and just he looks amazing.
That's another thing too. When he's in a scene with Robert De Niro, he's all put together. He also is only wearing dark suits, and Mickey Rourke is only wearing sort of light colored cream, light gray, beige, very much a a contrast, not just in, he's much more slovenly than this well put together, extremely, manicured gentleman. But also just he looks lighter in comparison to De Niro.
And stillness versus motion, there's a lot of contrast in that. Yeah, Mickey Rourke is dodging left and right like a boxer. He is a boxer. He was a boxer before he started acting, and then later on went to it after acting for a little while.
He also sold pretzels. Apparently, that was a thing that somebody wanted to point out that when I was reading about him, is that he used to sling pretzels on the streets of New York.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't think Mickey Rourke could get more endearing to me, but if he's selling pretzels.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dreamboat, really, selling pretzels, boxer build, kind of sloppy, but comfy, that's good. But having those two in the scenes that they have together, it's really interesting to see how differently they act in them. And, there were times during the filming of this where they didn't really necessarily get along. They kind of clashed a little bit, but ultimately they both respected the job that the other one had. Like here's De Niro, who's basically Hollywood pantheon god. He's the actor's actor, right there. And here's Mickey Rourke, who, like you said, he was more recently a boxer than he's been an actor. And even at this time before he took this movie, he was even thinking about getting out of acting. He was just kind of like over the whole thing. He was like, yeah, whatever, not a big deal. I've got other things I want to do. But putting them together, like the interviews that they had with them afterwards, is that they absolutely respected the job that both of them did in those, in the scenes together. So the third scene is my favorite, or the second scene with the two of them is my favorite. That's the one in the restaurant with the egg.
Yeah. So at that scene, Mickey Rourke has already encountered one body. There's been someone murdered after he went to see him, and he's trying to back out of the job. He's like, I didn't sign off for this. I might be a murder suspect now. So good luck finding Johnny Favorite. I'm out. And Robert De Niro is he's just sitting there eating a hard-boiled egg, just calmly cracking the egg, rolling it under his long fingers on the plate, and then just peeling it slowly, dropping the peel just right onto the plate, salting it, and telling him the story about how the egg is a symbol for a soul. And he's like, would you like an egg? And Mickey Rourke wants none of it because he's got a thing about chickens. I think this might be the first time we find out he's got a thing about chickens. But and he just takes this bite, just close up of Robert De Niro eating a hard-boiled egg.
Yeah. It's such a simple action, but there's so much weight to it. You're like, oh my God, that you can tell, like, this is why he has the Oscars he has the nominations he has the filmography he has, like, just like the slow peel with the nails, like so gently peeling bits off, like, oh man, ooh, creepy. It is creepy. It is. I mean, it's a horror movie, and this is part of that horror. Yeah. It's very psychological, very, very subtle, but it's there. It's like, I do not want to cross this guy.
Well, this is, and it's every move in that with the egg and everything. Everything is designed to dominate Mickey Rourke. It's just the slowness of it, just everything, taking his time, not interrupting his meal to talk to him. He's just going to eat an egg.
Yeah.
It's just
like I mean, that's kind of putting an interesting image in my head, sort of like Dom Daddy De Niro, with his beard and his dark hair and his like sinister smile and like just sloppy himbo Mickey Rourke. Like, this is a really interesting scene. I don't know how to feel. I'm getting very confused sexually about it. But yeah, I mean, it is the two of them on screen. And again, it's only 4 scenes that they're really on screen together. And those 4 scenes make this movie. Like, it's shocking the escalation in the interaction that happens between the two, but just how they present themselves and how they interact is wild. And even DeNiro said that the last scene that they had together, where Mickey Rourke is really breaking down a lot. Like he's hoarse, he's yelling, he's crying, he's just and De Niro is still very calm, although his hair is down and there's a very different kind of demeanor to him. He was really impressed by Mickey Rourke in that, and he said so afterwards, that he was just like he went for it and he hit it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, well, I think we had already talked about her, Lisa Bonet, hot off the Cosby Show in filming this movie. She was one half of a very controversial scene that unfortunately was preventing the film from getting an R rating because it was too shocking or too much to qualify for an R rating. And they fought for 3 months or 6 months. It was some enormous amount of time that they had to keep going back to the MPAA and appealing, because they were originally going to give it an X rating, and then it was going to be, I guess,
NC-17,
I don't know if NC-17
maybe
is out. Yeah, I think because it had just NC-17 was a new rating at that time.
Yeah, it was fairly new. I think it was out at the time. I think.
But that would have been the death knell for it, because the distributor TriStar would not have put it in any theaters. They basically was said, if this is an X rating or NC-17, we're just not going to market it. We're not going to distribute it. Mm-hmm. And good luck.
Yeah.
You know? So, but they fought for a while for that, and so Alan Parker and the producers were they were really fighting tooth and nail with the MPAA, and they were trying to be very public about it. Working with the media, just kind of getting the message out there that this is censorship. This, they're not telling them exactly what's wrong with it, what they need to do. It's generally arbitrary. Some of the members voted to make it an R, and some of the reviewers didn't, and so it was a different situation every time they went back to them, and there was no rhyme or reason presented to them. Unfortunately, the media picked up on the wrong controversy about the scene, and it's a sex scene between Lisa Bonet and Mickey Rourke. They were more focused on the fact that, our innocent little Cosby, the Cosby daughter having a nude sex scene. Mm-hmm. It's an explicit scene, like, oh my gosh, ooh, how awful, how naughty, how terrible. Yeah. And just ignoring the fact that it's, one, it's art, it's a film. Mm-hmm. And she is an adult. She was an adult at the time that it was filmed and everything. The actor is not the character that they play on the small screen or the big screen. But they ignored the fact that, like, it was the MPAA. Like, the whole issue with it wouldn't have been as big of a deal if the MPAA had just kind of stepped back and let it go. Yeah. Let the movie speak for itself and the scene speak for itself. But they focused all on, like, oh my gosh, how dirty. Like, this innocent child who's, we grew up with watching on the Cosby Show is... Yeah. Like, no, that's...
Yeah. You can always count on...
They interviewed her, I read a contemporary interview with her, and she was just sort of like, look, there was full frontal nudity in, Blue Velvet just a couple of years ago. Like, this is not that. Mm-hmm. Like, why is this being targeted? So, and they never did get a clear answer.
No. I mean, there's the Cosby connection, which is one thing, because Bill Cosby apparently raised a little bit of a stink about it himself. He was,
even though he originally had said to her, because she had asked for advice, and he said, like, do what's best for your career. Okay. Probably what he really meant was do what's best for my career. Yeah. Or maybe he did mean, like, oh, you're going to be showing full boobs? Sure, go for it, because I can't wait to see it.
There's that.
We know Cosby now. Cosby then was, like, very respectable.
Yeah. Cosby was, that was his image, was very respectable, middle America. And Lisa Bonet was moving from the Cosby Show onto a different world, where she was there for a season, and then, which was also in the Cosby universe. She was playing the same character. But
the Cosby universe.
Yes. But yeah, so there's that. There's the prurient interest of the media and everything. They're always going to be doing that. And also, it is an interracial sex scene, which could influence at least some of the members of the MPAA. But eventually, minimal cuts were made to the scene, and it went through as an R. So it is a rough sex scene. It's particularly, I mean, it's a rough sex scene, but also it's rough to watch just from the environment. There's eventually like blood dripping from the walls and everything. It is
pouring down.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think Alan Parker said I went into that room with a white shirt as I was filming. I walked out with a red shirt. You know, it was,
there was a lot. There was a lot happening in that scene. And for the 10 seconds they cut out, they did put them back in almost immediately for the video release. So, you know, if you saw the theatrical cut, it didn't have those 10 seconds, but as soon as you were able to rent it, they were back in. You know, is what it is. But yeah, to be fair to people kind of criticizing it, it was very rough. It was very explicit, but it was also, with the blood, kind of gory in that way. Like, I mean, nobody was being like stabbed or anything, but just blood coming down. It's a very jarring image. And I think very effective.
Yeah. And it's cut so quickly that because it's intercut with scenes from outside, scenes of an unrelated bacchanal somewhere. And it's like, and that's never explained. That's
right.
That is just something is going on somewhere. And it just, that gives the sense that the scene is part of a larger history and a larger plan, perhaps. And it's a heck of a scene. It's very,
it is. And, I mean, like, you know, in terms of nudity, obviously it's Mickey Rourke's ass. You see a lot of Mickey Rourke's ass. You also see Lisa Bonet, you know, her chest, but that's basically it. Like, it's, in terms of what's seen, it's relatively, I mean, it's artistic, but also Mickey Rourke does end up strangling her. And man, when he's going in for the push, it's like, you can feel the bed slam against the wall.
Yes.
from your couch. But yeah, there was some stuff that was cut, and that scene in particular, I think, even though the other scenes that they were going to add in at some point, but were cut for pacing, having the 10 seconds from this scene cut, thankfully didn't distract too much from the film. And of course it went back in afterwards, but this scene I think is probably one of the more disturbing ones. So like, obviously, you know, every time that DeNiro is on screen, it's sinister and like you feel the oppression. When you see the dead bodies, they are very gory. Like, you've got one with a shot taken out of his eye. You've got a heart cut out of one victim, and one guy meets his end in a giant vat of boiling gumbo. Gross.
That gumbo is so hot and boiling so high too. I'm like, simmer it. It should be simmering at this point.
One, you know, that is dangerous. If any health inspector were in there, it's also open in front, in like what looks like a shed, a dirty shed. Like, what is going on? But and I think, again, going back to that sex scene, and this is where, just as a warning and a heads up to people who are listening who have not seen this movie yet, this is the time where you have the opportunity to pause, go and watch the movie, and come back and continue to listen, because we are going to spoil the hell out of this right now. I think that sex scene becomes much more shocking once the truth is revealed of who and where and what happened to Johnny Favorite. Because as it was established, Epiphany, perfect name for this, is the daughter of Johnny Favorite. Harry Angel is actually Johnny Favorite.
Johnny Favorite. Yeah. He's stolen Harry Angel's soul, perhaps?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by cutting it out of him, They found a young man in New York who looked like Johnny Favorite, about the same age. They took him back to a hotel room or something, cut his heart out, and Johnny ate it, therefore gaining sort of like his soul is like a cover, as a disguise, as well as all of his memories.
Yeah, one of the characters says it was still beating while he wolfed it down. And
oof.
Yeah. And
which explains why throughout the movie, every time there's some kind of intense scene or a death that he's about to witness or come upon, you hear the beating of the heart. The music kind of takes a second. The soundtrack takes a back seat to this sound
Yeah.
of this heartbeat. But yeah, oof. I mean, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And of course, if you like exposition, Ethan Kuzmark literally lays out the step-by-step everything. Like, yes, this is what Johnny Favorite did. This is how he found him. This is how he killed him. This is what he did with the heart. And then, of course, he ended up getting drafted anyway, went to war, came back, and had to have like a new face and whatnot. And we just dropped him back off in Times Square and went back to New Orleans.
And that actor, I mean, he has a whole ton of exposition to give, an explanation. But at the same time, that actor, I just absolutely loved him, because once he gets to talking about it, once he gets to kind of like bare his soul and actually just say, here's what we did, he's so enthusiastic about it. He's happy he finally gets to tell someone.
Right. Like, he's been holding this in for the past 12 years, and he's just, like, even at the time, like, he had taken a fake name, Edward
Kelly.
Edward Kelly, and he with his daughter, Maggie Kuzmark, they actually take Favorite out of the hospital. They pay off some doctor $25,000 to just pretend that he's still there, and they just let him loose. But he gets more excited when he's telling this whole story. He's like, and Satan takes care of those. Like, he's definitely got some kind of, occult ideas, and he worships the devil or whatever. But the actor Stalker Fontlieu just basically just like he's like, if you wanted anybody to like vomit exposition, this is the guy to
yeah.
get.
Oh my God. He would just it pours out of him, and he is an all-time champ for that. He just, every little detail, it's just, oh, let me tell you this. Meanwhile, Mickey Rourke is like threatening him by just taking a hatchet and chopping up big blocks of ice behind him, instead of like, basically saying, this could get to you. But he's just spilling his guts anyway. He's just thrilled.
Yeah. And meanwhile, and then Mickey Rourke, he drops the pick or the hatchet and then goes off into the other room, practically sick.
Yeah.
He can't even stand up. He's just sweating and like freaking out, hearing all this, because of course, it's telling him, yeah, this is you, buddy. You're the sick freak who ate some guy's heart.
Yeah.
And then of course, with Robert De Niro in the following scene, when he goes back to Maggie Kuzmark's apartment, there's Robert De Niro revealing not just that he knows full well who Harry Angel actually is, but more to the point, Harry Angel should know who Louis Cypher is.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a homophone. Lucifer.
As he says, even your name is a dime store joke.
Yep,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Louis Cypher, Lucifer.
And not only is it Lucifer, but the lawyers that he uses to contact Harry Angel are named Winesap and McIntosh. They are apples. So
yeah, both the fruit with the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
Really, it's really fantastic. And then also the final reveal when Harry Angel, now Johnny Favorite, runs back to his hotel room to find Epiphany dead.
Mm-hmm.
Who's he pass sitting, right outside the door is the lady in black holding the basin, ready to clean up the blood. And it's revealed the lady in black this whole time has been Robert De Niro, Louis Cypher. But you're like, oh, death, like no matter where it is, death is not far behind, and neither is the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever Harry's been going, or wherever Johnny Favorite has gone, because everybody keeps getting killed. Now in this, Louis Cypher does reveal that it's like, oh yes, it's actually you who have been doing the murders. You just don't remember because I've.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite moments of the movie, is that montage of what Harry remembers and then an image of him actually doing the killing, and just contrasting that and like to a point where like him dropping a crab in gumbo or something, and then just putting Margaret Kuzmark's dad's head just into this boiling gumbo, this cauldron.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
you see that everything that's been up to this point has been him imagining that he's leaving the scene without murdering whoever the person is. It is pretty wild, and it's pretty gory at that point. And this is actually a little bit of a difference, just talking about how things happen in the book. In the book, it was actually Louis Cypher. It was the devil who was doing the murders, and not Harry. But he did make Harry think, like throughout the book, Harry thought that he may have been the one committing the crimes, but really it was somebody else. It was Louis Cypher having these murders committed for him, just to kind of, I guess, further freak out Harry / Johnny. But yeah. Oh, I mean, that reveal, and I think I told you, I'd more or less figured out about halfway through. Or at least had the suspicion. It's like, I think Harry might be Johnny. And then the sex scene happened. And I was like, well, I hope he's not. Because that's his daughter. And then, of course, when the final reveal, it really hammers home, oh my gosh, it is his daughter. And that's possibly another reason why the MPAA didn't want to give it an R rating. Because it's like, okay, well, guess what? It is violent incest.
Yes. Yes.
Violent consensual incest. Sorry, we don't like that either.
Yeah. And I mean, can see their point.
I can see, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I
mean,
get that.
But yeah, it's a lot.
But shout out, I mean, besides that, shout out to a lot of the sort of like the cameo actors who made appearances in this movie. Dan Florek, who plays Mr. Winesap, the attorney. Dan Florek, you might remember from Law and Order, but you also have Pruitt Taylor Vince, who makes an appearance here with a full head of hair and probably about like half the body mass that he's known for. He's known for being like the big, the big husky guy. And in this one, he just plays the detective in New Orleans, and you almost don't recognize him until you look at the eyes.
Yeah, but he's Pa Kent in the new Superman movie.
But there's a couple other people that make appearances too. Maggie Kruzmark is Charlotte Rampling.
Yeah. So
gorgeous.
She's been in the new Dune and Benedetta, and it's just
a lot of people's favorite Chausploitation, Orca.
Orca, yes. Oh my gosh.
I would be remiss if I did not bring that up, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But there's also a couple people who have worked with Alan Parker before. Kathleen Wilhoit plays a nurse in this movie. I believe she was in Birdie. She was in a couple other films for him. Also, the woman who plays the secretary for the New York Times, who makes an appearance, I believe that is Elizabeth Whitcraft.
Yeah.
Who plays Connie. She was also in Birdie, which was a couple years before that. That was also Alan Parker.
Yeah, she's the other big exposition scene. And that Alan Parker pioneers, as far as I know, sexposition. And that Game of Thrones perfected, where it's just like, all right, while you're getting the exposition, how about we have someone get naked?
Exactly. Which, in this one, it came with pictures and affidavits in the bed with lingerie. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just a really great cast. It's a really well put, really well presented, and just it was exciting to see. It was fun to see this kind of film, which I don't think it gets a lot of attention. I don't think it gets a lot of due, especially nowadays. Hopefully a little bit more will be coming from this. And, there's some great resources online. There's some really great fans of this movie that have put a lot of material out there. I will, put a link to his channel, but Cine G over at YouTube has definitely done a ton of research on this movie, and it's fascinating what he uncovers and what he talks about. So I will recommend, if you like hearing us talk about it, definitely check him out too, and really get down into the weeds.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I have to say thank you again for suggesting this movie, for wanting to talk about this movie, because I feel like I really got to watch something unique and crazy and interesting and gory and thought-provoking and super tense. And I loved every minute of it, except for the very, very end. It was kind of
the
very end. Epiphany's son with, that sort of freeze screen with the yellow eyes.
Yeah.
Dumb. But besides that, everything else was so good.
Yep. It's like if they had to cut 10 seconds out of the movie, why not those 10 seconds?
Exactly. Oh, but yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this movie with us.
Sure thing. Like I said, it's a favorite. It's got a lot of things. I love film noir. I love New Orleans. I had never been to New Orleans when I first saw this movie, but I've been there more than a dozen times now. I just keep on going back. It's my favorite vacation place. I'm just like looking at every street going, do I know where that is? And it's a fun game of a city you know well, is always to look for the places that things have been shot at.
You've just listened to another episode of the Bear Cave of Terror, and if you haven't seen Angel Heart, and sorry about all the major spoilers if you haven't, what were you doing listening to all of that last 15 minutes? Or after listening to us, if you're struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again. It's streaming on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and YouTube Movies, and it's also available to purchase digitally and on physical media. And Rob, if listeners would like to get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Probably the best way is to find me on Blue Sky. I'm at robstaeger.bsky.social. And yeah, I've got a picture of a ferret as my avatar. So
ferret fans out there, definitely drop a line. And if you want to, you can also follow the Bear Cave of Terror on Blue Sky or Instagram at Bear Cave of Terror, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. And as usual, a list of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about Angel Heart. And remember, you might lose your heart in San Francisco, but you definitely don't want to lose it in Times Square or in New Orleans. Good night, everyone.
Listen, what do you do around here in the summertime?
I bite the heads off of rats.
What do you do in the winter?
Same.